We are met here tonight on the only day set aside to honor the energy of the universe. And so naturally the subject is love. What's this, you say? I thought the subject was going to be healing. Healing is a side effect of love. Healing is one of the ways love is expressed and felt. Love is the fundamental energy. Now, you've somewhat debased the term in your culture and in your language. Love meaning many, many things, and so you think of little Valentines in space. Love, the energy of the universe. What does that mean? It means that all that is in reality is of love. It means that every atom and every molecule, that every bit of space and all of the planets and all of the stars and all of the creatures are derived in infinite variety from that single energy. God is love. Love is God. God is what? God is the universe. There is no simple or clear-cut way to put to you in terms that you could understand in the limitations of human form, what is God? Is it this bearded old chap with the wise eyes who looks over you and causes the occasional tornado and would wreak miracles if you beg abjectly enough? No, of course, that's not God. That's a very shadowed glimpse of the immensity and the totality of God. God's energy is expressed by what you call love. You all experience it, and yet you all seek it. You feel you cannot find it. You don't offer it to yourself. You pay lip service to it. You misname it and you misunderstand it. Why? Because you are caught in the shadow of love. Voluntarily. You are the fly that flew into the web, knowing that you would be eaten by the spider, but knowing also that that would be an illusion and you would go on forever. And so here you are in the web of what you think of as reality, but is actually a construct. It is real only in one aspect. Half real, half fantasy. Half dream, half nightmare. For the dream, too, is the reality. There are many ways the poets have described reality as God's dream. And in a sense, that's the case. You have entered into this separation from God, this separation from love, voluntarily, to explore this shadow. And on this voyage of discovery, refine your spirit, expand your knowledge, your understanding, your wisdom, your godliness, as a stage on the ladder to oneness with the Godhead, while at the same time you are already a part of that. We are telling you, and we have told you, you're all one. That is part of the lesson. When you are able to perceive that oneness, that wholeness of your identity, not limited to this mask you wear, not limited to the apparent independence of the body you ride around in. When you grasp that wholeness, then you will be free of the shadow. In the grip of the shadow, called fear, illusion though it is, you are caught in the web, believing what is not true, and finding with painful slowness what is true. It is a rediscovery. It's nothing new. It's a memory lost and then found. Paradise lost and regained. In the exploration of the dark, which begins in that awful moment of birth, when you feel your knowledge, your wisdom, and your power slipping away from you. Mark me, there is no greater trauma, no more frightening experience than sensing the death of your true self as you are born into the darkness, into the shadow. And what do you find? As the memories of your true self fade like mist, you find that you are trapped in a body utterly helpless to help itself, utterly dependent upon the goodwill of others for its very survival. And worst of all, slipping inevitably into ignorance. You know, the memories of who you are and who you were stay with you for a while, to varying degrees, but all of the time you are conscious that they are going away. You're not adding to your memories as you do in life. And as this fearsome prospect assails you, you take upon yourself the mantle of humanity and the quest for the light that you have so lately left. And all of this darkness has but one purpose, and that is to reveal the light. Illness, dis-ease, is one expression of the shadow, of fear. It is not real any more than any manifestation of fear is real. You are convinced by your fears, and you will note that the severe illnesses or the long-lasting diseases that come to you are related to the issues in life that you face. They are not separable from the spiritual self. While you fear, you will be ill. You will be out of balance. You will not be receiving and recognizing the love that is the truth. And so what happens in illness is you cede a part of your C-E-D-E, a part of your body, a part of your being to the forces of fear. Love erodes within you. It erodes because your fears are being triggered at the beginning of this life. As the memory of your true identity is lost to you, the triggers begin. You have brought with you a piece of the darkness to explore. And it is made manifest in your life by those who love you, by those who have agreed to play this role for your good and for theirs. And so your father dies when you are most vulnerable and dependent, or your mother dies, or your father leaves you, or your father ignores you, or your mother beats you, for their own learning and to set up in you the conditions necessary for your exploration, that piece of the darkness that you are going to turn into light by your free choice during that life. It doesn't always work out that way, because you do have free choice. And because the darkness, though frightening, is yet somehow inviting. Everyone, again, pays lip service to the notion of being good. However they define being good. Of being kind and loving to their neighbors and to their friends and relatives. To being in bountiful good health. To dancing through life on feet of joy. To live in peace and harmony with all of the world. And yet, look at the world. Look at yourself. You betray yourself. And you betray yourself for a purpose. And as that purpose is realized, and as the effect, let us say, of the abandonment of the Father is repeated in experience after experience with men, until you are fenced in, unable to choose joy, because every time you reach out, every time you try to trust, you're squashed and you're walked out on. And your feeling of worthlessness is reinforced. It's not cruelty. It's love. Creating the conditions necessary for healing. Healing is integral to this world, to this universe, as an aspect of love. And it is at your hand, and yet you do not choose it. You walk with a limp. You cough and you sneeze. You double over in pain from a stomach that you have abused. You gasp for air from lungs that you have choked. Why do you do this to yourself? Because you are out of balance. Because the unease becomes dis-ease. Because the arms of fear in that darkness have a curious security to them. You are protected from your fear by giving way to it. If you allow the prison gates to close around you, and you do not trust and you do not act, because you know from your experience what's going to happen to you if you do. When you surrender to your fear, that pain, that inner rage, that disappointment with yourself and with the universe is translated into physical response. This is a new age. What we've been speaking of has been the lot of humanity from the foundation of humanity. The exploration of the duality. The light versus the darkness. Polarity. Black and white. Fear and love. Out of sync with yourself and with the universe. Living in an illusion, tormenting and torturing yourself and your friends and your neighbors and your relatives, in a horrible dance of death. But it's all been preparation, exploring the dark, the valley of the shadow. That has been humanity's experience. Enough glimpses of light to keep plodding onward. But the experience of fear, war, pestilence, every aspect of fear explored. You have gone through all of that history. You experienced the French Revolution and the bloodshed that surrounded that. You experienced the Black Death in the Middle Ages. You were there in every war, in every disaster, participating in every famine, suffering. What does suffering mean? Suffering means experiencing. And you've been experiencing. Not because you're masochistic and want to torment yourself life after life, because you are learning. All of this experience, accumulating. All of this exploration of this fear and that fear and the other fear. Fears beyond counting. And what is the result? Death, life. And that eternal. Back to the light. What you go through as a single human being in this life is a microcosm of what you go through as a human being in all of your lives. And that is a microcosm of what humanity as a whole, all of your brothers and your sisters and your identical twins, despite their outer disguises, all participating in this journey through the valley of the shadow, through the darkness, to the light. Experiencing all of the pain and all of the anguish, all of the illness on every level, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, sick unto death. And finally, the time has come to be healed, to be whole, to recognize at last the reality of love and the ghostly, imaginative quality of fear, and to see that fear drift away from you, to feel yourself coming into wholeness and oneness. Not empty, hollow words, but recognizing as you look within your soul and as you look within your body that you are no longer twisted and bent, no longer blind or deaf, no longer mute, no longer crippled, whole. Whole. Healed. You are in and have always been in a process of healing. Healing is the reality, as dis-ease is the illusion. Healing is love. Love is healing. The lesson of this age that is climaxing with the fulfillment of its promise was the lesson of the meaning of love. And that all you ever had to do was say, oh, okay, I'll take it. That you have to bend no effort, put no shoulder to the wheel, put no nose to the grindstone. Only say yes. The hardest lesson of all is the simplest. Now, because of all of you that you have learned and all of the fear that you have explored, you come into this time and into this life and you look at yourself and you think, oh, I'm as screwed up as ever. I'm afraid of this and that, and I don't do this right, and I don't think very highly of myself, and I really don't treat people right, and I look at myself and I think, how can I be close to wholeness? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if the disguise you wear is a false nose or a complete clown outfit. It's all just a disguise. It's not the reality of who you are. And when that breakthrough comes, it doesn't come like a clap of thunder. What a wonderfully magical experience that would be, but it's against the rules. It comes because you allow it, and because there is all of the work of tearing down all of the bars and all of the walls that you put up to protect yourself that turned into a prison that captured you. And as you tear them down, you are faced with the terrifying, awful prospect of freedom. The terrible, awful prospect of health, of wholeness. You've been down so long, struggling and scrabbling in the dust, that you don't know how good it will feel when you stop. But that's what you're learning now. And as you learn this about yourself, this simple truth that makes you blush and turn your head away to think of it, I am perfect. Oh, not me. They're perfect, but I'm not. If they could see inside me, they'd... Oh no, not me. That's the thing that's difficult to look at, and difficult to say, and difficult to recognize. That this is just a disguise. That you are perfect, and you put the disguise on in order to penetrate it and see, oh yes, I am. But that moment is at hand. And it's not that easy to get to. All of this destruction that comes at the same time the construction is going on is very often disheartening and confusing and painful. You are letting go of an aspect of yourself that you've always considered your whole self. This is me, and I'm committing suicide. Bit by bit. All of these choices that I'm making, well, it sounds wonderful, but I feel like I'm dying. I'm losing my sense of identity. And it all hurts a great deal more than I'd bargained for. The path is not a broad, smooth highway leading into the rainbow. It is strewn with boulders and detours, and on either side, vast chasms that you fear to fall into. When you say goodbye to yourself, yes, you're saying goodbye to fears. Oh, that's wonderful. You want to do that. You're tired of being blocked. You want to have that soulmate. You want to be able to use your creative energy in the most positive way that pays big money too. And you want all of these wonderful things, to happen to you. And they're just there in your reach. But all of the burdens that you have to put down before you can accept that gift distract you. You are being healed, but you feel like you're being killed. You are being born, but you feel like you're dying. You are wallowing in your fear. Because that's necessary. That is the healing. That is the healing crisis. That is the darkness, the depth of darkness before the dawn. And so as you go through this process, and you timidly set forth your foot upon the path, and you affirm your purpose in this life, and you bravely take that leap of faith, you're going to get more than you bargained for. Because if you knew what it was going to be like, you wouldn't take the first step. But you've done it. You've all done it, and you're on varying places in your personal path of development and recognition. But by and large, relating as each of you do to the timing of the universe, to the timing of this vast, all-embracing, evolutionary, revolutionary change, by and large you're going through the same process. Your sense of oneness increased as you share the fear of dying and the fear of flying. You fear to take the freedom. You fear to take the health. You fear to take the wholeness. Why do you fear it? The responsibility. No one to blame if things go wrong, but they won't. But that's faith. Belief, trust. And not trust in what you can hold in your hands and see with your physical eyes. Trust in something so diaphanous, so suggestive, so difficult to grasp. And others look at you and say, you're nuts. And your family say, you need to see a psychiatrist. And so you find the support of the other nuts. And thus, bravely and feeling half foolish, continue on this path. And because of what goes on in your life and the trouble that you go through and the issues that you're dealing with, those who have not had this choice, have not made that choice, think, oh, that's a wonderful thing to do. You were in better shape before you started this. Well, they're not supposed to get it anyway. That's not the time for them. You are a part of a universal change, but you're pioneers, you're beginning. It's the most difficult role you could have chosen. And the most rewarding. You say, great, where are the rewards? I found it difficult. This is the time, the moment before birth. This is that deep illness, that high fever, that critical time before you break into a sweat and start getting well. The pressure's on, but you need the pressure to pop through. You need the pressure of the frustration of your life to give you the courage to set foot on the path. Now, what has all this got to do with healing? It has everything to do with healing. We've been talking about spiritual healing. And of course, the healing of the physical self follows that. But there's work for you to do. You don't just have to sit by, get out of the way, and let the process go on. That's fundamental. But it leaves you twiddling your thumbs and trying to interfere in ways that you're not good at. So there are things for you to do, the outer self, to work on, to develop. That being that you are all becoming, that triune human being, complete in body, mind, and spirit, that whole person with the duality over with, that being has power that humanity has only dreamed of. The powers of the spirit. You take the magnificent abilities of a great artist, of a great musician, of a great writer, of anyone who uses that creative talent and brings it to its maximum. And you look within yourself and you go, oh, I'm pretty good at this too, and the other thing, and the other thing. Those are nothing compared to the powers of the Spirit. The powers of the Spirit are so enhanced by the unity of body, mind, and spirit. All your powers are enhanced. A good artist becomes a better artist. That unity, that wholeness, triggers into life those abilities that have been called wild talents, that have been called extrasensory perception. Nothing extra about them. They come with the set. And all you have to do is invite them in. Go through the turbulence, experience the fear, try to focus your attention on the birth rather than the death, but don't turn your back on it, experience it, it's all there for you. But know this, as painful as it is, and as frightening as it is, and as difficult as it is the path of healing, not the path toward death. It's going to make you fear everything that you fear the most. If you fear dying the most, you're going to think any second you're going to keel right over. If you fear being sick, you're going to be sick. If you fear being spurned in love, boy, you're going to be spurned in love. But the reality is that all of these things that you fear are not truly going to happen. That they are illusion, they're going to prove themselves to be illusion. And you're going to help them along by learning how to use these talents of the Spirit. At every stage in human development, man has had to learn how to use what he's been given. How in the world do you make fire? How do you get warm? How do you hunt? How do you grow things in the ground that are good for you? Tremendous effort. Took hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years to grope your way through those. And then when you're given the freedom of the mind, just a few thousand years ago, boy, that gave you headaches. Trying to figure out, what do I do with this now that the gods aren't in there telling me what to do? How do I choose? What can I do with this untested, untried organ? Well, you learned. You learned that it was dangerous as well as powerful. You learned that it could create great evil as well as great good. You learned that its finest products could be misused. But you stretched it, and you exercised it, and you went from rubbing two sticks together to dimly comprehending the idea behind E equals mc squared. Good going. And now the exploration of the talents of the Spirit began. And now the horizons are limitless, because this is the final act. This puts it all together. And you, each of you, far beyond your present awareness, primarily because of a lack of confidence, have all sorts of new to you, to your awareness, abilities. Now, the difficulty with them, in dealing with them, is that they're the abilities of the Spirit, and they're subtle. You don't manipulate them with your hands, and you don't puzzle them out with your brain. You allow them to flow from your heart, from your intuition, from the Spirit. The uses of the Spirit are spiritual uses. The way you use them is through the exercise of the Spirit. The way you create a drawing is through the exercise of the mind. Build a car through the exercise of the mind. Light a fire, go hunting, and grow through the exercise of the physical self. So to learn, your mind has been trained and brainwashed regarding rationality and seeing is believing, and you've got to be able to sniff it and touch it and hold it and have it all happen over and over again exactly the same way before you believe in it. And to make that leap into what seems at first like foolishness and error is difficult, and that's the accompaniment. That's the leap of faith that's taking you through this whole journey into wholeness. And in the use of your subtle senses, your spiritual talents, it's hit or miss at first. You get into the meditative state, which is the working state really for the use of these, particularly at the beginning stages, before you've completely integrated your spirit, so that you don't have to go into an altered state. You're capable of more than that. But going into the meditative state, that's the lab, that's the workplace for developing the talents of the spirit, and it takes practice. And if you've ever drawn, you know that when you start to draw as a child, you draw everything wrong and out of proportion, and the legs hanging out of the head, and it's not right. It's an approximation, but it's a start. It's a step. And then you keep practicing, and your observation improves, and your use of the tools improves, and your experience improves you, and pretty soon you're drawing very well. Well, it's the same thing with these talents. It's not easy at first. You're not very good at it at first, and you're a bit awkward using the tools, and you forget how from time to time. But in the meditative state, the answers are all there. The abilities are all there, and slowly you get used to using them. You get used to using the tools. You get used to manipulating that aspect of your energy. And that is where comes the healing. What you are doing in your life is turning fear into love. is going from the darkness into the light, is going from dis-ease into health. And that is the work of the Spirit, making whole, bringing light. And in using these abilities to bring health to your physical self, you are using the same love that you are accepting in your spiritual process. You say, I believe in love. I recognize that love is the energy of the universe. I recognize that everything that I fear is nonsense and not real. And finally, you convince yourself in this process, and you become whole. Well, at the same time, these spiritual talents are fed by that same love. Love is healing. Healing is love. And here is the work that you can do while the rest of the process goes on at the behest and at the timing of your higher selves. Keep your fingers out of that pie as much as you can, because you don't know how to improve it. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Your higher self, that's the job it's here to do, and it's very good at it, and it's going on. And even though you may disapprove of some of the process, and you think there's entirely too much pain in this, and if I only did this, or if I did that, it would get better and I wouldn't hurt so much, forget it. Use that time, use that ability to manipulate that energy and use it on the physical self. And that's something you're good at. You know, we're not leaving the ego and saying goodbye forever. We're learning to escape the ego's control so as to bring the spirit up into wholeness and balance. Balance is the goal. You're not to be all spirit any more than you're to be all physical or all mental. You're here to be human. And so use that ego self. Use that brain as well as combining it with the spiritual energy and direct that energy into healing the body. The body will not heal any faster than the spirit. And if in healing yourself on a physical level, you feel you've gotten stuck and you think, well, I've get so far and I can't seem to get any farther, that's because you're stuck also on the spiritual level. And as you move forward, get out of the log jam, break it up, dynamite it. So then there will come a breakthrough on the physical level. So what we're saying is don't get discouraged as you start to learn to heal yourselves on that physical level. Because it is going on and it is working, but it's just as frustrating, equally, absolutely just as frustrating as the spiritual process along the path, because it is an accompaniment. It is the effect of that cause. But there is so much you can do and so much that you can learn about using that healing power. Now, the abilities of the Spirit, all of you have them, but you have them as you do other abilities in different proportion. There may be one who plays the violin like a virtuoso and can't draw the proverbial straight line. Equally talented, but channeled in a different way. So is it with the talents of the Spirit. You have the knowledge within you. Never forget this. You know, Plautus and others like Plautus may be able to draw out from you what your options are, to draw from you illustrations, but we connect with your higher self. The knowledge is within you, and it is accessible to you. So don't give up, but don't expect to get it out chapter and verse. You're going to get it in feelings and in intuition. And as you explore yourself, now let us say that you want to correct your structure, that you've got a bad back. And we choose this analogy because this is what Paul has been working on for a number of years, and it's been very frustrating from time to time. There'll be a breakthrough, and then apparent slip back. But you can draw this energy that you are receiving, and we've called it the Mary energy, soon to be joined by the Christ energy. You can take that energy that is entering into you on all levels. Now, don't visualize it as just something physical that enters in and changes you that way. It is an energy of being that it is incorporated into you as a being of energy, incorporated into you and becomes you. A new improved you, but you. Not you with merry energy floating around. As that energy is incorporated into you, it becomes effective at all levels. It helps move you through the spiritual process. It helps you learn to control and to understand and to accept your emotional self. And it is available for use in correcting your physical imbalances. Balance is the goal. When you are out of whack, whether it's your skeletal structure, some other chronic issue of health, the desire of the body is to be healed, is to be whole, is to be in balance. The body's natural state is perfection, as is the spirit's. It is only distorted by fear. You are able, and again, work in a meditative state, to use your abilities to visualize. Now, so often the mistake is made and visualization's effect is diluted by your thinking of it as being just a daydream, just imagination. Saying, well, I'll create this picture, but it somehow doesn't seem like reality. It seems like my usual wish projection and daydreaming and so forth. That's not that at all. It is a recreating of reality. You are using your right as a human being to change who you are in every respect. You create your reality for good or for ill. You can choose now, at this time in your lives, to create a reality of wholeness on every level. You will be able, in the not so hypothetical case of the person working on the bad back, to feel within yourself, to expand your consciousness, so that you are aware of the structure and where it is imbalanced, and in cooperation with the body-spirit, open yourself to the healing, begin to direct that energy that is at your disposal, that is part of your being, into creating the balance that is the body's natural desire. Now let us say we have one here who suffers from arthritis, inflammation of the joints. It is an expression of fear. It is healed through the use of visualization, which is a recreating of reality, and not projected outward but inward. So that you begin to undo on a physical level the effects of the fear as you are undoing the effects of the fear on the spiritual level. And in your visualization, you are allowing your body to assume its natural state. You are removing gradually the veil, the fog, the mist of imperfection and imbalance. You are not forcing yourself into a mold. You are not forcing out disease. Wait a moment. You are simply allowing a natural process to go forth. And doesn't that sound like exactly what you're doing in the spiritual level? It's easy. It's only hard when you don't see what's going on. When you believe, haven't we said all along, faith is the fuel for the spiritual process. This is a universe founded on faith. It is a construct. And faith is the key. If you believe that you can bring healing to yourself, you believe that because you believe that you are one with God, because you believe that you are here to become whole, because you believe the truth. That belief becomes a part of you and changes you, and changes the way you look at the world and at yourself. And you begin to straighten. Now, we're dealing with the physical laws as you have through the long evolution of the mind, and discovering that they are not so limiting as was thought 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 20 years ago, yesterday. There are laws, absolutely, and you can't violate them because they're the rules of this game. But you can expand into them. And that is what you are doing. But nonetheless, flesh is flesh. This isn't magic. There's no abracadabra. You're not going to be one day crooked and bent over and the next day straight as an arrow. The bones and the muscles have to change their position relative to one another. The straightening takes time. Imagine the fearful agony of a diseased body suddenly being forced into straightness. You'd die. You couldn't stand it. And the same goes for all other illnesses of the body. They aren't real, you let them in. And you can let them out. You let them in through a window of fear and let them out through a door of freedom. Everything is in your hands. That is responsibility. You are a child of God. What is a child of God but God? You have more ability and more power than you can possibly imagine. Imagine it. Act. Begin. Leap. Be bold. Attempt the impossible. It's all within your powers. Not by tomorrow morning, or next month, or maybe next year. But it's all there for you to tap. Do you know what a world you are creating and that you are a part of, that you are the pioneers in? A world in which each human being is linked one to the other in understanding of oneness, so that words alone will not obfuscate, will not prevaricate, will not distort, will not separate, because you look beyond words. You know the truth. You feel the truth. If someone loves you, you feel that love. If someone wishes to turn away, you are aware of that. It's not something separate called telepathy or clairvoyance or any of the words that you've put on the various peaks of the glacier of reality. It is one. It is who you are. A human being designed, inherent within you. From the blueprints on. God's in training, in embryo, containing within you all that is and all that can be. You can do anything. Anything that is the product of love. That is the vehicle for love. Love for yourself is where it all begins. You cannot truly love another, not without fear, not without possessiveness, not without dependency, not without expectations, unless you love yourself. As you love yourself, you bring healing to you. As you bring healing and love to yourself, you bring love and healing to all around you. You are the vehicle of that expression. A creature of love sheds light, brings healing, brings joy. Act in your own best interest. You know what they are in your heart. Know that fear is illusion, designed by a frightened ego self to prevent chance-taking. Better the devil I know. And you will bring healing to yourself. Now we teach Mary energy training. How to use this energy that's entering into you in the transformation process, as we have described some of it to you. This is not the only voice to be heard, and it's not the only avenue of understanding not the only way to learn the tools that are within. For each of you there is a voice. For each of you there is a course of study. For some, it will be entirely indwelling, and you'll draw it all from yourself because that's your way, and that's how you learn best. For others, these words and the way that we describe and teach is going to be best. For others, there is another voice. Open your heart. Stop censoring your life. Stop acting out of experience, because that will only limit you. You're trying to reenact who you used to be. Well, I remember back when that happened to me, and I did this, and such happened. Therefore, though I'm not that person anymore, the same thing's going to happen. Well, stop. Don't act out of experience. Act out of faith and love, out of affirmation. And you can't fail. That is the assurance. You cannot fail. Failure is not built into it. You'll fear you're going to fail. From time to time, it'll look to you like you're failing. And your health will get worse. You'll start getting those headaches again. You'll start snapping at people again. You think, well, so much for that. I blew it. I'm not very spiritual after all. Well, that's where you need the faith. If everything was wonderful and being spiritual consisted of smiling beatifically at everyone and patting them on the head and sending them love and wishing them a nice day, well, then it wouldn't take much faith, would it? It's the dark nights of the soul, the darkness before the dawn, the illness that causes the racking pain, the sadness, the despair, the loss, the anguish. That's when you need the faith, and it's there. And the assurance that this is the valley of the shadow, but the light is there, and you are reaching the light. And the light will heal you in every respect, and it will heal the earth, and it will heal humanity, and a new age dawns in which you reach out to the stars and you reach in to all the worlds within. This age of exploration that is just passing is nothing. Practice. Pale harbingers of the age of discovery that is dawning now, when you're not going to be distracted by the struggle with fear. It's beginning for you now, and if we sound like a cheerleader, we mean to. Because you need to look at the bright side, because it's so hard when you feel your feet of clay being dragged down into the muck, and you think you're not getting anywhere, and the dailiness of life distracts you from the reality that you know in a few brief moments of meditation. It's hard to keep your eye on the light when the darkness surrounds you, but the light is there. It's why you are here in this life as this person. Because it's time. At last. The night is over. So we're going to pause for a break, and then we'll come back and ask any questions you have. Thank you.
Plautus? I've heard of a process where people can actually pull energy blocks and pains out of people.
Yes.
And yet, in my understanding, and as you were saying before, people need to integrate and own what's going inside them. Is that a helpful practice?
Yes, but it can't be released until the person is ready for it. As we've indicated, you know, while all on this path share abilities and talents of the Spirit, they don't share them equally, in the sense that they don't all have the same specialty. They all have abilities, but they're in different areas. Some are benefited by those who do have the ability to release blocks and open those matters, but only after inner permission is given, that it is appropriate in the timing of the process.
Oh, thank you.
Plautus, you had mentioned that people, that the body would not appreciate being suddenly changed and altered. And yet there have been accounts of faith healing, of all kinds of things, from eyes developing to... And I know once I asked you about a Catherine Kuhlman who had very strong powers and gifts of healing, and some of these things would happen.
Yes, well, there have been, through history, those who have these abilities, as we say. They've not been in common use and not available to all. And the generation that is evolving now, they're available to all. In the matter of the body's ability to adjust to change, what we've indicated, and we were speaking particularly of the example of the changes of the skeletal structure, but what we are indicating is that the body must change in accordance with physical law and not more rapidly than that allows. And there are some cases of dis-ease that are primarily emotionally based, that are like a disguise laid over the body, that is a mask. And when the mask is removed, then one finds that there was no true physical dis-ease. And so while there is certainly such a thing as true physical dis-ease, and so when that is released, then it is the lifting of the mask and the reality revealed. Also, there are some kinds of dis-ease that do not require great bodily adjustments, that are self-contained, and that require, in the example of blindness, for example, sometimes that's hysterical blindness. It's the willing not to see, and in some cases there is nerve damage that is akin to a short circuit. Well, a fuse can be replaced in a short circuit, and the current turned back on. That, in a sense, can be done at a spiritual level too. Again, only when the individual is ready to see. And of course, as you can easily see, that is a spiritual issue. But where there is a degenerative disease of the eyes, where there is a clouding, a physical clouding of the vision, that can't be healed in that way.
Plautus, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say that we should just leave the soul's progression alone and just put our attention on the physical?
Well, what we're saying, and we're putting it in exaggerated form to make it clear, is that you are at present divided into two beings: outer self, inner self, ego self, higher self, however you wish to define them, and that the spiritual self, the higher self, is fundamentally in charge of this healing process of the spirit. But it must receive the permission of you, the conscious you. You must decide, it's time. I surrender, and I will go through the process necessary to deal with this. Now, the temptation then is to meddle. And to think, well, things aren't going fast enough, and if I only behaved in such and such a way and did such and such a thing, I'd speed things along. Well, that is artificial, and it is not, the process unrolls itself in the appropriate speed necessary for you to assimilate the changes as they occur bit by bit. And you cannot rush that process because it's linked to inner timing. And if you try to rush it, you can only block it, and you can only frustrate yourself. Primarily, that's the result. Not that you truly interfere with the process, but that you drive yourself crazy trying to. And so we give you something for your hands to do so that you don't meddle. And that is that you can take a legitimate role in healing of the physical being. Because there there is a use of the consciousness. The talents, while they are spiritual in origin, are not limited to the spiritual body. They become integrated into the whole during this process. And this is something, the physical healing, that you can attend to, that you can see positive results from, and that distract you from trying to push or pull in the rest of the process.
What does that mean for me? I'm in relatively good health. Does it mean that I take up jogging, or what do I...
Well, yeah, all right. That's a very good question, because obviously not everyone has grievous physical disability to deal with. And while everyone is out of balance, that lack of balance on the physical plane may be in a variety of ways. There's always room for improvement. There is always a toning and balancing process to go through. And for those that do not have an overwhelming either need or desire to bring the kind of healing we were talking about, then yes, your body as a sentient part of your total being is going to be giving you constant messages. As you heal, as you grow closer to your true state of perfection and wholeness, then areas of imbalance stand out more sharply. And so it requires balancing. It requires attention. The body requires a better, clearer, higher fuel for its sustenance and nurture. And so you will need to make adjustments in diet. You may wish to add vitamins, particularly in these periods of stress that is such a drain on the body's energies. There are all sorts of things you can do. Yes, physical toning. We don't recommend jogging because it's so hard on the bones and tissues of the knee. But walking, exercise, swimming. There are a variety of things that you can do. We say pay more attention to the physical body. It is not only is it the temple of the spirit, but it needs better than you've given it. When you're not in this process, well, you can get along well enough and eat junk food, and you see old generation raised on junk food, and to everyone's amazement, they seem to be as healthy as anyone else. When you get into this process, you need to be healthier because the demands are going to be greater. Because in fine-tuning the total instrument, you need a better fuel. So there's always work to be done.
Now, children recently are dying of Reye's syndrome, and there's AIDS, and there are candida. And tonight I heard about, they found out that cervical cancer is oftentimes connected with a male wart sort of thing.
Yes, well, what you are seeing and describing are fear triggers. And naturally, in the expression of the polarity that is going on now, as the Mary energy increases, as the energy of healing and of love increases in its reality and its appearance, so does the exaggeration of the effects of fear until the polarity is stretched to the breaking point, at which time, just as in your own lives, when you are stretched to the breaking point, the breakthrough into wholeness comes, the great leap forward comes. And so it will be, in this case, well, what is being triggered? Sexual fears have been leading the list, because so much of our fears as human beings are hidden in the area and expressed in the area of the sexuality because of cultural reasons, and of hiding and shame and guilt and so forth and so on, that are all different names of fear. And so these fear issues come up, and what do they give us? They give us guilt on a personal level. I shouldn't have been. Oh, I've been bad, and now I'm going to be punished. And when it is not personal, then often it breeds judgment. These people, this group of people, that individual is bad and has acted out of sin, and is being punished, and quite rightfully so. But you see, that too is an expression of fear, and you shall not judge. That is among the preeminent rules of life. Thou shalt not judge. Each case is individual and equal in the eyes of God. And you cultivate your own garden and bring the love into yourself. And when you bring that love into yourself, you're not going to judge anyone else. And so your business is yourself. So as this work goes on, that is the direction that it heads. Fear comes up and challenges us. And those of us who are moving through fear, who have invited it in order to explore and explode it, go through it and release it and are not harmed. Those who are caught up in the fear and are experiencing that aspect of the polarity will invite into their lives that which they fear. You create your reality positive and negative. And intense fear is intense visualization, and you will create what you most fear. So.
Now, is that, on the physical sense, has the ground been prepared in the bodies for this fear to manifest this way because of the junk food diets for a couple of generations?
Well, of course. There's always a corollary process going on that implements spiritual necessity. And so whatever is needed pops up. If you need diseased rats, then you're going to get a lot of diseased rats. And if you need whatever you need, it will come because of necessity. And if it's going to be chemicals in the diet, then it's going to be that. But you see, most of that is fear. Most of this whole business of is composed of two separate but equal aspects of the same emotion. One is the gradual awakening of the individual who has, even before he may recognize it or she may recognize it, chosen the path of the Spirit, and is therefore more sensitive to what is ingested and what is breathed and what is done with the physical self because of that awakening understanding. And others will experience the reverse side of that coin, and will embrace and will feel the illness and the disease arising from these same causes, from these same tools.
Is it true that mankind on Earth is one of the very few races in the universe to work through, or will have worked through, the emotions of love?
No, absolutely not. Love is the universal.
I mean, working through the emotions.
Oh, exploring the fear and finding the way back to love, as we've been saying?
Yeah, rather than experiencing it through.
There is no repetition of classes. You don't take one class and then take another class and think, oh, this is the same thing I just studied. Absolutely not. It's a different aspect of universal understanding, much of which would be completely Greek to you as human beings, since it's not on your plate, it's not on your menu. And so the exploration that humanity does is unique. And all spirits, since we're dealing with eternity here, all spirits, you and you and you and you and everyone put together, experiences all of the lessons, all of the growth, all of the experiences of life at every level. But you don't repeat what you've already learned.
Plautus, you said that we should let the healing happen and try to keep our fingers out of it. Can you give me some specific examples of what I could do with my arthritis in order to keep my fingers out of the spiritual matters?
Well, we would have to, that's a course of study in itself, and there is no shortcut. And we would say, take a healing course, take the Mary energy or the Marielle energy, and learn to use the tools that are at hand. As we've indicated, the spiritual growth and the physical healing are companions, both fueled by love. And it's simply a matter for you to learn how to use the tools to begin the physical healing and to accelerate that physical healing because of your attention to it. Ultimately, you're going to heal physically if you heal spiritually, if you never lifted a finger on a conscious level. But you can, because you have these talents, you can apply the talents and maximize your ability to heal. And it will, too, have its effect on the spiritual plane because it's a two-way energy street.
Plautus? Last October, I had the experience of actually walking through fear, and there was a burst of white light. And it dealt with an area of the body, but that I don't know if that was important or not. Mainly, I walked through a fear issue, and I felt a big release. It seemed like it was a very easy thing to do, and yet I haven't been able to do that again. Or maybe little bits here and there, but things have been so out of focus.
The pieces of the puzzle have to come together in a certain respect to each other for breakthrough to occur, looking at it from a purely mechanistic point of view. That all came together according to the timing. Now you're beginning, every step leads to the next step. Every step implies the next step. And so moving from that step, well, you find yourself apparently at the bottom of the same ladder, but you're not. You're at the bottom rung of the next ladder. And now you start to draw, we're certainly mixing a lot of metaphors, but now you're starting to draw together the elements needed for that next breakthrough into understanding. In the spiritual journey, you are always at the beginning.
It feels that way. Thank you.
Plautus, yesterday evening I heard that David had a combination probably of David and the fundamentalist school that Ian is going to, that Ian has come back to Cynthia and said that that people that worship the devil and people that are evil will all go to hell, and knowing that David has said that Cynthia worships the devil because she comes to Plautus. And he cried. He wants his mother to believe like everybody else. Now,
that's both her trial and his, and it is not for the purpose of causing torment to her or torment to him. Ultimately, the purpose is revelatory, and it is among the thickets of fear that she must go through. It is the tests to her own faith, and they are sharp and thorns in the heart. And so must be. They must be so sharp for the movement to occur. For him, the darkness will not last. It is creating, as you yourself know in your own life, that excursion into limitation provides a platform for leaping into the open.
Well, I would like to ask in continuation about its effect on me. Because I think most of last night I didn't sleep, and when I went back to bed late this morning, the sense of anxiety in me was extremely strong, and just a basic back-of-the-mind preoccupation with this whole thing. And I would like to know...
Well, it's exactly what we've been talking about. It is the healing crisis. It is the darkness before the dawn. It is the depth of the soul's sickness, attempting to hold on for dear life to dear death. And you will not succumb to it. We've spoken to you before because of the power of your mind, the power of the ego self. You have been in a life and death struggle with yourself, seeking to be born and to die at the same time, and seeking to prevent the birth.
How does this deal with the issue though with David and Ian? Because to me it seems like they're totally connected. Somehow that is...
With your own background? Well, it's not unique. That is going to be found frequently in families and relationships. It is going to see the sundering of families and the sundering of relationships. It is part of the polarity, the embrace of the old vision and the embrace of the new. And if you look at history in any time where great ideas and great movements in thought and understanding occurred, that's what happened. Certain individuals began to be able to see what had not been visible before. And the others who could not see that wished to put them to death, to stop them. You cannot shake my reality. This is what is real. And they cling to it. That's what's going on in the world. The polarity is increasing.
And that also represents what's going on within me, that part stands for the part of me that will not let go.
Yes, of course.
But by having it happen this way, it's helping to bring up the issue to me.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes, to clarify it, put it in the spotlight.
Can you discuss the nature of mental illness a little bit? How can somebody who's mentally ill will to have themselves healed?
By and large, and there are certainly many exceptions, by and large, a life that is dominated by mental illness to the point where there is not the ability to choose in the same sense that we have been speaking of, is an experiential life. It is a life that is not to be a part of this evolution at this time. Everyone ultimately is going to go through this graduation. All human beings. That's the goal, and that's the destination. But just as in this time and of history, there are many who are here simply to experience the darkness, to experience the fear, to experience limitation, and to profit by that experience not in this life but another. And so that is the case for some. And it is, of course, karmic, and the reasons will vary from individual to individual. In others, there is a exploration of madness caused by despair, caused by a loss of faith, caused by a fear of the reality so great that it is fled. That is not incurable. That does not remove you from the ability to choose, in which case it is simply a part of the exploration of imbalance that anchored in the mind more than in the body, still an expression of the cause, which is spiritual. Also, in terms of specific kinds of illness, mental illness, it will be related to the karma that is being dealt with. To use a very rough example, one who has been exploring issues of betrayal will experience at least one life as a paranoid who sees nothing but betrayal, who feels nothing but the darkest suspicion. And that is a part of the experience that goes into the whole. So that, remember, you're dealing with eternity. There's no limit to the number of lives necessary for you to learn the lesson necessary. And there's no time used except as you see it in this narrow stream of reality. So it is that's not a limitation. There are the matter of schizophrenia, for example, is often one who is caught between realities, who is not of this time and space nor of the other, but shares and is confused by that double vision. Who is, and remember, all of these experiences lead to wholeness. Fragmentation is always necessary before wholeness, whether it's physical, spiritual, mental, or all of the above. First is fragmentation, the breaking down into the separate pieces of the puzzle, and then the exploration of the reality, the learning of lessons, the leaps of faith that lead to bringing the puzzle parts together into a coherent and understandable whole. And that's assimilated, and you move on to the next lesson in the next stage. In terms of healing, you may bring healing because the higher self is not affected by these matters. And the permission of the higher self is all that's necessary to bring healing, because the higher self knows what's appropriate and what isn't. And so you can certainly bring, and it is your joy as well as your responsibility as a person on the path to share that love in the way of healing, and not for you to judge when it will be useful and when not, but to give it as a gift free and clear. And it will be taken as love, and love heals. And so often those lost in mental illness are those lost in despair, separated from their understanding and reception of love. And so love is the great healer, and it is the treatment of choice for mental and emotional illness.
Thank you. Plautus, there was an episode I know of in California and Sweden where there was a therapist in California working with a woman who seemed very much mentally ill. I don't know exactly what the problem was, but she went back to Sweden, and for 3 days or so the therapist was going through all kinds of hell, possession or something like this. And then something broke loose. The woman in Sweden got well, and the therapist got well.
Well, transference in the extreme. The therapist would not have taken upon himself or herself this dark entity unless that was the bargain. Now, there was an agreement and an understanding between these two. It wasn't an accident nor an act of malevolence. It was an accepting for high purpose of this fear entity. It was a transference, yes, but the therapist can let it go. Now we speak of entities. Fear, though illusionary, can become tangible. The fear images that you create, you as human beings individually and you as humanity collectively, have power because you give them power. You fear them, and so you give them power. You create ogres and monsters of various descriptions, and they exist. There are entities attracted to fear, as an animal to the smell of blood. And if you are vulnerable, that is to say, if through your own fear complexes you have opened yourself to attachment, you can be attached. Never if it is not in your path. Never if you will not learn from it. Only if it is appropriate will you receive this and be attached and attacked by these entities. They will be removed as the rest is healed through love. And to go into detail means case by case, and we can't do that. But that is the principle. Yes.
So she, in a sense, took on an entity off this other person?
Yes, but it's not hers, you see. She can release it.
Well, she did.
She opened to it and then and assumed it, and she released it. Now, it's been seen in some kinds of healers. They will heal by taking upon themselves the condition that they are healing. That condition is not truly theirs. Their body may be temporarily distorted by the illness that they have accepted. It is a Christ-like act. And it is released because it isn't theirs to keep. Yes. You know, we're going to end this reading now, and we thank you all for your attention, and we bid you Godspeed as your journeys continue.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Bob.
Bob.
Thank you.